from the vault, high atop the pastoral center of the Diocese of Camden, you're listening to Talking Catholic.
Hi everyone, thank you for tuning in to Talking Catholic. This is Mary McCusker, and with me is Mike Walsh. Mike, how you doing?
I'm good, Mary. I'm very excited about this episode of the podcast. I'm genuinely excited.
And you actually are being sincere when you say that, because I know you're excited. Usually you're sarcastic, but this episode is a product of one of your crazy ideas, which at first I was really nervous about, but now I'm excited.
Well, yeah, because, for one thing, we've already recorded it, so this is the intro we're tacking on the front. So it ends up being good. So we did a crossover episode with the podcasters from the Diocese of Metuchen, Tara Smith, who's the communications director up there, and Jerry Wutkowski, who is her digital media specialist.
Media Content Strategist. I'm looking at the title
so
right
close.
now.
So close to getting it right. And they have their own podcast that they do for the Diocese of Metuchen called Am I Not Here? Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, it's better than ours. So, no, it's not. But it is very similar to ours. And I really enjoy the way they bring their spirituality and their faith. They have sort of a similar perspective on life as us. So we really wanted to have them on and just chit-chat with them.
And they're genuinely fun. I was nervous because I'm thinking...
Because you're not genuinely fun?
Well, now, wait a minute. I was nervous because I'm thinking, what if they're so much better than we are? I don't know these people, but they were truly so down to earth and filled with life, and it was such a pleasure to talk to them. So your crazy idea, I hate to admit, was a really good one.
Thank you very much. Tara's a delight. Jerry's a delight. Their podcast comes out weekly, every place you can get podcasts, just like ours. So I very much hope you will enjoy listening to what our colleagues at the Diocese of Metuchen are doing, and they're great folks, so enjoy this episode.
This is the podcast I've been wanting to do since I found out that another diocese in our area decided to steal our idea for a great podcast. And
Mike, there was no stealing involved.
No, Mary. I don't believe that to be true. I believe everyone steals all of our best ideas, and I believe that because I steal everybody else's best ideas.
That's how the church works.
Exactly. And life in general.
Feeds off of each other. It's a sharing.
We build each other up in New Jersey.
Amen. Amen.
So here's who we have on the call today. We're actually doing a special crossover episode, as we probably alluded to in the intro. So I have with me my beloved co-host, Mary McCusker. How you doing, Mary?
Quite all right. How are
and
you?
I have my counterpart in the Diocese of Metuchen, Tara Smith. What's going on, Tara?
Hey, Mike.
And some dude that works with her by the name of Jerry, who I forgot to ask how he pronounces his last name before we got into the podcast. How do you pronounce your last name, Jerry?
It's Wutkowski. We've totally Americanized it.
Very proud of you. So if anybody has ever listened to any of our prior podcasts, they all know that I am a podcast addict, I guess would be the way to put it. And I listen to a lot of secular podcasts, but I was looking at my social media where I follow all of the social media for the other dioceses in New Jersey and in Philadelphia and regional dioceses and a few others, just to see what they're working on. And I don't know, like almost a year ago, I saw that the Diocese of Metuchen had come out with its own podcast. So naturally, my first reaction was to be irate. Like, that's what are you talking about? We're the only ones that are doing podcasts. So Tara, as the Associate Director of Communications for the Diocese of Metuchen, how did you guys come up with the idea of doing a podcast?
Well, we'd been talking about it for some time before COVID hit. It was kind of one of those things on our list to reach people in a different way, on the go, especially. That's how we, Jerry and I both listen to podcasts driving to work when that was a thing. When
driving to work was a thing?
Yeah, right. But because of COVID, we really felt the urgency to just pull the plug and just do it. So really, it was Jerry's kind of brainchild who he kind of put it all together and said, we're going to do it. So we did. And here we are. I forget even how many episodes we're in, but we recorded
37, I think.
Is it 37?
Wow, Mike, you did your homework for once.
Wow.
It's very unusual for me to do homework.
I think we're at 28.
What? I don't think so. I thought it said, I looked at your feed
Mike
today.
Walsh is wrong. That's my favorite sentence ever.
Well, one of you is incorrect.
It does happen a lot.
We'll get there. We'll get there to 37.
But you're right. You're at, I don't know what you're at, actually. You know what it is? Because your
it's okay.
Feed, No, your feed used to have numbers in it. Now it doesn't have numbers in it anymore.
Yeah, it's very confusing. But it's been a joy to kind of have people on our podcast and get to know the people of our diocese. There's so many ministries happening, and I'm sure you guys experience this too. There's so many good ministries and good things happening that often the stories go untold. So it's just a pleasure to get to know and share their stories.
So what does kind of the back end of all of this look like for you guys when you go out and, find different guests? What does the back end of your podcast look like? Who does most of the legwork?
That's actually how ours looks like too. Like, I don't know.
I don't know if this rings true for you guys, but I think normally the stories find us. I mean, very rarely do we have a week where it's just Jerry and I, because sometimes we'll do that. Just Jerry and I will host. Still talking about relevant and important things, but a lot of times the stories kind of just fall in our laps. What do you guys do?
We're the polar opposite, Mike. We got to find our guests, wouldn't you say?
Well, I think so we've been doing this for a long time now. This I think is the 204th episode. We started in February of 2017, I think. And it was really so our philosophy was a little different. The podcast was always sort of an extension of the newspaper. So I really wanted to find, and it's always been an interview show. So with rare exceptions, it's always been an interview show. So I've always wanted to find, somebody interesting and out in the parishes, or even, in the Catholic universe, where we could just talk to them and see what their perspective is, and sort of spotlight them as people who are doing great work in the diocese, with the idea, going back to, what we've talked about in the past about stealing ideas. I'm a big believer in the positive sense. I'm a big believer in, if I find somebody's doing great work in one of the parishes, I want to showcase it so that the other parishes will see it and, jump on board. I don't know if I'd necessarily say it's been arduous to come up with guests.
That might just be me, because I work at Catholic Charities. And so I work with a bunch of case managers and social workers who by nature are so humble about their work. And they never want to, brag about it. And I'm out there as the marketing person for Catholic Charities in the Diocese of Camden saying, you guys, you have to share these stories. This is amazing. And then they're, no. They just want to stay behind the scenes. So maybe, Mike, that's why it's more difficult for me sometimes. They're very humble and they don't want to brag about what they do, but I want to brag for them. So,
and I guess maybe the reason I have three co-hosts now, rotating co-hosts, is because it did actually become difficult after a while for just Pete and I, because when my original co-host, Pete Sanchez, was a part of the podcast, we basically knew all the same people. So getting new faces and new voices, in this case, on the podcast was a bit of a struggle. So that's why I went to Catholic Charities, went to one of the parishes with Carrie Janice, who does youth ministry, and then went to the schools department with Marianela Nunez, who could really do a much better job of reaching into those areas. And I kind of felt like those three were the three major, for podcast listeners, those were kind of probably the three major areas of our listenership was, social justice, education, and spirituality / youth ministry. And what we found was that, we do get a lot of listens out of it, and very, very, when I know that things are going well is when I get a complaint about one of the podcasts. I'm like, oh, good, somebody's listening and is currently irritated by something I did. Most recently, it was somebody was irritated that I talked too much on the podcast. I'm like, well,
as you continue to talk.
I mean, well, it is a show about talking, so
this is true.
But
so
I was,
for you guys, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it was because we had a very young priest on it that had just been ordained, and everybody wanted to hear from him. And I had been having a bad day, and I wasn't ranting, but I had a lot of things to get off my chest, and it took like 30 minutes to get to him. And when you only have a 55-minute podcast, that was a bit much. So I did learn my lesson, which was shut up.
Well, that's a good segue into asking Jerry and Tara, outside of this podcast, what does an average day look like for you guys? What are the other hats you wear other than the hosts of this podcast?
That is a loaded question.
Does every hound count? Can we put all the hats on?
All of them. Let's hear.
Right. Yeah, it varies. I would say it varies day to day. Wouldn't you, Jerry? I mean,
yeah.
There's never a day where that's the same, I'll say. I think that's just church communications, in general. But it could vary for me, handling the media. You never know what's coming through on that end. Kind of going through social media to make sure we have all of our bases covered. Working through with our pastoral ministries, helping to support their initiatives. I would say that's probably a bulk of it, working with our schools, the newspaper, the Catholic Spirit, shout out to them. You just never know. I mean, what the day is going to bring. So go ahead, Jerry. I'll let you have a turn now.
As communicators, it's so funny how much, I'm sure, Mike, we can relate to that too. Each day, you just don't know.
Well, that's what it is. How many times me and Tara will sit down and go, this is our plan for the week. And
right.
We're like set in stone, like Friday, like this is what next week's going to look like. And Monday morning, I get the call at 9:00 in the morning. And it's like, forget the plan. We're doing something totally different. And you just got to be able to roll with it. And that's like a key thing in this line of work is that many people think that, oh, we have this idea, we're going to make it happen, it's going to be great. And I'm like, I think of all the contingencies that have to go into that. Like, what if this doesn't happen? What if this doesn't come through? What if we have to come up with a new idea? What if it, somebody throws a last minute thing in, like, Pope Francis dedicating a whole year to St. Joseph was just, we found out that the morning of. And so it's, you have to just be ready to just go with it.
Yeah. So is that something that comes naturally to you both? Do you kind of like that unpredictability? And I guess along with that, how did you find yourselves in the world of communications? Can you tell us a little about your backgrounds, how you ended up here?
Well, first I'll say I love the flexibility of it. Like, I love having every day be different because I'm never, ever bored. I don't think in a million years I could ever be bored in this job. Because it's so different. I went to school this is a fun fact for you. I went to school for communications and I started out as a videography major. And I said to myself, I know I want to have a family one day down the road, and maybe I'll switch to public relations because that's more of a 9-to-5 job. And
oh my gosh.
So hard at my young, naive self looking back. Because I was like, oh, well, if I'm doing video, I might be in a newsroom, working at 3 a.m. Little did I know that the world, public relations people are the ones providing that to the video people. So here I am, at all hours. But that's kind of how I ended up in communications in general. And I always tell this story, but it always sounds crazy. It makes me sound crazy. For some reason, I just knew I wanted to work for the Catholic Church. I don't know why. Don't ask me why. So when I started at the diocese as a public relations assistant, and when that position became available, it was part-time. And I said, you know what? I wasn't looking for part-time, but I'm willing to accept it because it's something that I knew I wanted to do. So here I am 7 years later, still going, but now full-time, more than full-time. And
not 9-to-5.
9-to-5. So for anybody considering communications, just know You will never be 9 to 5.
People hear communications, and like, I remember back in school, that was kind of code word for, well, I don't really know what falls under that umbrella, but then you just come to learn, oh, just about everything.
Everything. Yeah. It's so true. It's so true.
What about
How about you, Jerry?
So my story's probably the same, a little different. Before I was in Metuchen, I worked in the youth office in Trenton, and that was not the 9 to 5 type of job. So I was always doing something, always running around, and the opportunity popped up in Metuchen. I was like, yes, 9 to 5, relaxed schedule. It's like you sit at a desk all day, you're not running around, and here I am running around, not 9 to 5. It's a joy.
Yeah. It's so fun. I mean, and Jerry and I are like, I feel like some days we're like a road show. Like we're at parishes, we're filming. We're like, he always jokes he's the one-man band because he'll just whip out a video camera out of nowhere. And like, he has like several bags of video equipment that we carry around with us. And you just never know where you're going to be, who you're going to be interviewing, what you're going to be doing or videoing or writing about. So it's exciting, I think. But how about you guys? Tell me about yourself now.
You first, Mike.
I was a
the jaded PR guy.
I started out as a journalist, and I was working for newspapers down the shore, and then I was doing freelancing for Gannett, and then I worked for a medical newspaper that was about the eye care industry, and actually before all that, I went to college to be a teacher. That didn't quite work out. But the journalism stuff did, but it was the same deal. It was like, you know what? I would always get these press releases from PR people, and they were all so terrible. And I was like, so I knew all the things not to do. And I was like, well, Rowan University has a really good PR program. Maybe I'll go over there instead, and I'll get into PR and I'm not kidding you, literally for the 9 to 5 aspect of PR. And then the rude awakening happened where I found I worked for a nonprofit called Volunteers of America Delaware Valley as their marketing manager, communications manager, something. But what I found was, I was doing development work, I was doing event planning, I was doing the regular marketing and communications, and then crisis communications and all that kind of stuff. So it was a great learning opportunity. As a matter of fact, when Mary came on board, she has had the same baptism of fire that I had when I was working at Volunteers of America. And then I kind of bounced around with some other jobs, all with like marketing. I did law marketing for a long time. And then I did event management at a much larger scale, like 20,000, 30,000 person events.
That is my worst nightmare.
Yeah.
Event planning.
Yeah. It helped me learn to deal with my anxiety. I'll tell you that. But then the same thing, an opportunity came and I was looking to, I can't say that law marketing will feed your soul. So I was looking for other opportunities, and my wife happened to see the ad in our Catholic Star Herald, award-winning Catholic Star Herald newspaper. And
had to throw that in there.
I love them so much. And that they were looking for a communications person in their schools department. So I applied to it. And someone had the wisdom to say, well, we have a hole as the communications director. Maybe this guy, he's probably overqualified for schools communication. Let's put him over there. And they brought me in, and I went through the trials, and they seemed to like me. And here I am 5 years later. And,
Wow.
Like Tara, that's exactly what it is. It's the best job I've ever had. It's the most rewarding. Gives me the most opportunities to do stuff. I'm working on the side of the angels all the time, or at least as close as I can. Everything I want to do is to create and tell joy and all the great things that happen in our Catholic parishes and schools and the diocese and the ministries. So it's been a wonderful opportunity. And then I get to work with people like Mary over at Catholic Charities that on those rare days using air quotes, where I'm depressed, I just walk over there and I see all the great work that they're doing for the people who need it so badly. And I'm like, whatever's going on in my life pales in comparison to the clients that they're dealing with. And it's kind of like resets my perspective a little bit and makes me very happy in the job that I have. Although I'm always happy with my job. What about you, Mary? You're the last one, I think, to come up with this dumb idea of working in church communications.
Wow. So much for, how much you love spreading joy around, but
other people's joy. Me, and I'm just miserable, but other people's joy.
Well, for me, I went to St. Joseph's University in Philadelphia for college, which is where Mike also went for his undergrad.
The hawk will never die.
And I studied marketing there, but eventually switched over to study English, specifically journalism. And that's when I just learned, like, this is it. Like, I love interacting with people, learning more about them. After that, I worked as an intern at a biotech company. And after that, I actually moved to South Korea for a year to teach English there. And I almost signed a second-year contract to do it again because it was just the best experience, best year of my life. But I said, you know what, it's time to go home. I should probably get a job, like plant my roots somewhere, which is in South Jersey. And I kind of took the long way home, traveled with my sister actually for about 5 or 6 months throughout Southeast Asia, and came home and moved back in with my parents and went through like a 2-week phase of sleeping and just readjusting and reverse culture shock. And then I checked my email and I happened to be subscribed to, this communications jobs list, I guess. And it just so happened that the first link I clicked was for a marketing and communications person for Catholic Charities Diocese of Camden. I said, I don't know about this, like working for the church. I'm not so sure, but I read the description. I looked at the website and I saw that mission statement of Matthew 25:36. And I said that is something I can get behind and put my efforts into. So I work for Catholic Charities. I market all of our different services and programs, but I also wear this hat as a co-host of Talking Catholic and help out with, the communications efforts. So that is my story.
That was so well said.
Isn't it? It's almost like she's been practicing.
I'm jealous of your travel.
Yeah. You should follow her Instagram feed. Her Instagram feed is full of places that she's been. And she's also, I should say, an excellent photographer as well. So she takes
all of that. We landed up in the church.
Yeah,
Right.
It's true. Well, that's the thing, and this is the thing I always try to tell people is, particularly in our parishes, there are so many resources out there for now. There are so many people in the parishes that are really knowledgeable, really understand things that I think most parish staffs might not have an expertise in, or pastors might have an expertise in. So I'm always encouraging them, find those people, those, maybe they're, diamonds in the rough, but they have a basic understanding of things that maybe the parish staff doesn't do. And they can really bring a lot to these parishes, that the parishes shouldn't feel like they have to do everything. In the last, I don't know, year, I guess, we've now put all these YouTube shows on. They're all under the Talking Catholic banner. And, we didn't know what we were doing. I have certain skill sets and other people have certain skill sets. And we just kind of cobbled it together and realized that if we did it enough and practiced it enough, we could get really good at some of these things. And that's, I went out and found, people in the parishes that I thought had great stories to tell and had a real ability to talk about their spirituality in a way that I think would resonate with people. So as I found them, I gave them YouTube shows and said, hey, listen, do 5 to 10 minutes every other week, and we'll put up a show. And so now we have the Talking Catholic YouTube channel. And so
told a whole lot of people to do stuff for free.
I prefer to think of it as coercion, but yes, that's...
I don't know if that's better.
But maybe, do I twist a lot of arms? I do twist a lot of arms, but that's because I really think there's a lot of great things out there that need to be promoted. And as Mary has found, working with our very humble social workers, there are times you need to grab people by the scruff of the neck and bring them forward and go, no, you don't understand. You don't realize that you're a role model, that people need to hear the great work that you've been doing. Listening to your shows, Tara and Jerry, it's been wonderful for me, because it's like, okay, I think we're on the right path, because Tara and Jerry seem to be doing almost identical to what we're doing. We find those people out there and we have conversations with them. And before we got on the podcast, I was telling them that, I love the fact that they're still a true podcast. They can go wild west. They can just, talk to someone for 20 minutes or talk to somebody for an hour, and it could be anybody at any time on any subject. I really love that. And
I'll say here, Mike, when you brought up this topic of, talking with the co-hosts of this podcast, I was so nervous. I was thinking, oh my gosh, they're probably so much better than we are. I'm scared. I'm picturing like the NPR-ish, sounding podcast. And Mike was like, well, listen to a few of their podcasts. And I did this morning, actually, and last night. And I said, God, they sound great. They're so like enthusiastic and engaging. And my worries were put to ease. So I don't like admitting this, but you were right, Mike.
I don't know though.
Too. We cobble things together.
Yeah. It is 5 minutes beforehand sometimes, where it's just, we really let the spirit move in some moments. We'll have like a general topic. I'll be like, Tara, we're talking about this. And she's like, okay. And we just go like.
But you know what? I don't know about you guys, but some of the best conversations that we have are in those moments where we don't have it all planned out. It really just comes so naturally.
Yeah. And then the surprising twists and turns sometimes with guests, where you have this, I like to plan things. We'll talk about this topic, but then they drop a bomb on me like, oh yeah, I used to be seminary, like just some crazy fun fact. I'm like, well, now we have to ask questions about that. But I'm curious, like, have there been certain guests or topics that you guys especially like to talk about?
I love talking vocations. So when, before our diaconate class was ordained, and before our priesthood ordinations took place, we had those seminarians on, and that's just so much fun. It's so much fun to get to know them. And they're really on fire. So that's contagious, even through podcasts. So that's close to my heart. But it's also informative to me too. We recently had a priest who's the director of our Office of Ecumenical and Interfaith Affairs. And he was just so knowledgeable. So he talked with us on, I always get this wrong, but Nostra Aetate.
Oh, yeah.
He was just so knowledgeable, and he could go so in depth on it, something that I'm not as knowledgeable about. So
I will say that I saw that episode pop up, and I saw it and went, nice. We did that one a year ago. All right, we're ahead of them. That's fine.
Like, let go of the competition here. No. We are all one church. We're all New Jerseyans.
No, because
we have a campaign that says one church together. So really embrace that, Mike.
I love that. Yes.
I'm competing against all of you now. It's like because I think competition inspires creativity and really pushing yourself. So there's a part of me that, listen, I've been in this job now for a while. I've been doing this as a profession for 20 years now. So, there are skill sets that I know that I'm good at, but I have, how can I say this? Sometimes working in the church, you come across people who are very content to do the same thing all the time for the rest of their time. And I have been fighting against that, both externally and internally since I got here. When I was hired, they specifically asked me to help push some of my fellow directors to be more, I don't mean this to say culturally progressive, but to start thinking outside the box. And I've done that to many of my fellow directors' chagrin and irritation, including Mary's boss over at Catholic Charities, there are some times when he just looks at me cross-eyed, which is ironic because when it comes to Catholic Charities,
he's a pusher too.
well, that's what the irony is. He's so progressive in his own way, like always coming up with new ideas and new programs. And then I came in trying to push him in another direction. He was like, "Nah, I don't think we should do that." I'm like, "Well, do it anyway." So let's give this a whirl. So when I see what other dioceses do, that's kind of what informs me. It tells me that what we're doing is the right path. Or like if I see these guys having an interview with someone, like you guys did a Civilize It episode in August of last year, and we had it scheduled for September, I think. And I got so annoyed because I was like, man, I should have done it in August. I don't know why I was waiting. I could have scheduled it earlier, but I didn't. And now these guys have done it, and everybody's gonna know about Civilize It when I can do it in the summertime. So it's and I say
it's still relevant. We still need the Civilize It campaign.
Yeah, that is true. How about you, Jerry? Is there a favorite topic that you have? I know Tara said she loved vocations, and how about you?
To be honest, I love it when it's just me and Tara gabbing.
Aww.
Like because we dive into like our heart of our work, and then we dive into a particular topic. So like when we did talk about the Civilize It campaign, it was just us sitting around, like if we were at a kitchen table together, talking about the realities that's going on in the world. And then what are we called to do as church in response? And I find those to be the most uplifting because me and Tara will talk to each other for hours, throughout the week.
True.
And when we get that good hour to just really dive into the topic, it's grand. Even with all, Tara's kids come in, they say hi. Like it's like a family moment. And it's something that I think we've sort of missed in this last year where we're sort of disconnected from one another. So just to have that moment to share with each other, like, how's life going? How are you, reacting to this particular topic? And then really engaging with those outside in our diocese to be like, here is the Civilize It campaign. Here's what our thoughts are on it. Here's what's the church saying. Now, what are you going to do about it?
Yes.
Yeah. And I think to Jerry's point too, like the great part about just having him and I is it's so natural for us because we do talk regularly on the phone throughout the week just to keep connected on the projects that we're working on. And so it's really just a recording of what we would talk about on the phone anyway. So yeah, I agree. I like that too.
It's so interesting because that's something I've actively avoided when
I was just thinking we'd be arguing the whole time, Mike, or ripping on each other.
Yeah, but that would be real church right there.
Well, I'll tell you. So in the beginning, we had my first co-host and I, he really wanted to push us in that direction. I resisted because I really wanted an interview show. So what I would do around Christmas time, and you guys are sort of doing that with us now, is I would do I stole this from a podcast called Nerdist. We would have hostful episodes where it would just be the hosts coming together and chatting, usually around Christmas time, New Year's Eve. And the first year we did that, like I would look at all the stats, and my co-host at the time was really excited to do it. And I said, okay, we'll record it. We'll put it up. And then we put it up. And he goes, how did it do? I said, half as much as everybody else. Nobody cares about us. Don't worry about it. But in the years since, now that I have a changing co-hosts, we're going to actually, and the next episode we do after this one will be our end of the year hostful. We're actually beginning of the year hostful. I'm actually really looking forward to it because the four of us haven't been together since the summertime. And I really like to do that. We celebrated our 200th episode a few weeks ago, and the original plan was to do a live show, either like a Facebook Live, with audience. We had done it once before for our 100th episode, and we had a blast. And so I wanted to make it even bigger for this year. And since COVID hit, that was not going to happen. So it was a bit of a bummer. So what we did instead, we did a Zoom style one where we all got together and we invited our favorite guests from the past year. I invited my third favorite guest from the past year, but only because I can make fun of her a lot more. She's a fellow director. it was wonderful. So I do like having these moments where we can just sort of chat with each other. But my worry was that nobody would be interested. But then I listened to yours, and to be truthful with you, it's Am I Not Here, right? Is the podcast title, right? Just there's a level of spirituality on your podcast, which and weirdly, I know this is going to sound strange because we work for the Catholic Church, but maybe it's because I may fall into the social justice world of Catholicism from time to time, or I may find myself falling into that. So I'm always, what things are we accomplishing? What are we doing? Right. And sometimes I do worry that our podcast doesn't spend enough time on spirituality, whereas you guys really do a wonderful job of embracing it, which is, I've worked with a lot of communications and PR people, and we are typically not known for our level of spirituality. Our cohorts around the world. But you guys really have it comes through as a genuine sense of your faith. Is that something that you carry with you in your everyday life? Successfully or unsuccessfully, perhaps?
No, but you want to know what, like, the whole point of the podcast, Am I Not Here, is based on sort of our diocesan spirituality. A year ago, we consecrated the diocese to Our Lady of Guadalupe. Bishop Cecchio has really, really pushed us to, turn to our Blessed Mother, to pray to her, to embrace her in times of trial and in times of joy. And so when I was reflecting on, like, what are we going to do? I reflected a lot on the words that Our Lady gave to St. Juan Diego. And so that's how Am I Not Here came to be, because it's based on those words, Am I not here, I who am your mother. And so we focus everything that we do around Our Lady and how we can share her in the many different things that take place. So it could be, Sarah mentioned about, Nostra Aetate. How does that play out in our role as being evangelizers, but also as being solid Catholics, and really diving into our relationship to Jesus through our Blessed Mother. So whenever we get together, whenever we do something, we try to highlight that spirituality, because that spirituality is something that we've grown together as a diocesan family.
Yeah, and I think too, over the past year, we've had some directors come in, some new directors who are just very faith-filled people. So that's kind of forced me to up my faithfulness game, in the best way possible. Like even having Jerry on board has really pushed me to, okay, I want to know more about that. But that's a good thing. And I really hope for everybody's sake that they have somebody like that in their life who can push them to want to know more and about the faith in particular. But, Am I Not Here pushes Talking Catholic to
Darn right it does. I had to bring on Carrie Janice just to raise our spirituality game. It was amazing. It is true. And it's, when we made the jump to also broadcasting on domestic church media, I did actively alter some of the things about the podcast, because that their listener base is very spiritual, and in the best way possible. And I realized that, so when I start planning these things from once we made the jump over there, was, I was like, I can't do social justice all the time. I got to make sure I'm bringing people with a spiritual nature on for that listenership, because my number one rule is, both with the Catholic Star Herald and with the podcasts and with the YouTube shows, is we have to always respect the audience. So and this was something that, Pete and I back in the day always had a difficult time with, which was, I care about them. So what do they want to hear? What do they want to listen to? What do they want to see? And sometimes I'm wrong. Sometimes I'll put together shows that I think are going to be great, and I'm like, man, missed the mark on that one. But live and learn. But
our diocese is very, diverse. Each of the counties, the 6 counties that make up the Diocese of Camden, are all, different from each other. We're one church of the diocese, but I honestly don't know what the makeup of the Metuchen diocese looks like, but, just being mindful of all the different audiences and just how, like, the whole patchwork of the diocese. So it's tricky to, cater to everyone.
Yeah,
That
I
makes
think
me feel better, Mike.
I think New Jersey in general is unique in that way because we have the same thing in our diocese. We have 4 counties and they're just all so very different from each other.
It's different states too. You go from east to west, so it's a whole different world out in Warren.
Right.
That's what I wanted to ask about. Like, what are for the people who listen to this from our diocese? Can you tell us a little bit about the makeup of your diocese? I hear Warren. That's a county, Metuchen?
Yeah. So we cover Middlesex, Hunterdon, Somerset, and Warren counties. Hunterdon and Warren counties are a little bit more rural from our other counties, whereas Somerset and Middlesex counties have kind of our main cities, New Brunswick, Perth Amboy. So those are the more populated, condensed areas. You see more diversity in general there. So their problems aren't representative of Hunterdon and Warren's problems. So it's just trying to kind of walk that line of meeting everybody's needs.
Yeah. It's finding the balance, really. When we think of church as a whole, we think of our brothers and sisters, and so we have to think a little deeply, like, how is this affecting, my brothers and sisters in Perth Amboy? And then I go, well, how are they affecting those that live in Washington? So they're living 2 different lives, and we always have to remember that when we put content together, we put out a message, or we put out anything. But I think the solid thing there is that we're all rooted on this journey towards holiness and towards following Christ. And so most of the times when you find that balance, you at least have the same foundation. It may not look the same, but the foundation is there.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that. And we certainly have that here. Most of our diocese is very rural, but then we have very urban areas in the Camden County area, and certainly Kansas City and Atlantic City. It's and in our case, I don't know if this is the same for you, but we also have a very strong Hispanic influence in South Jersey. So we're always making sure that we how do I put this? We have to always make sure that we're giving them the due that they deserve in the Hispanic ministry. So as much as we can, bilingual that we can. So it's or Spanish language, not even bilingual. As a matter of fact, one of the things I've been really pushing for lately is for people to realize that Hispanic ministry is not Hispanic ministry. It is working with the Mexican population. It's working with the Puerto Rican population. It's working with the Cuban population. It's working with the Colombian population. And that has been a struggle to get people to understand. But I think I'm starting to turn the corner on that, when people are really beginning to realize that there is a big difference between the Puerto Rican population and the Mexican population, and don't confuse the two, because you'll literally offend people. It's that's one of those things that I look forward to in this job. We were talking about at the beginning was the fact that we're never bored. I very much like not being bored. Speaking of boredom, we're recording today. Mary and I are in the office because the Camden Diocese offices are still open. Are the Metuchen offices open or closed or hybrid?
Metuchen is closed today, but we are
Snow
working.
day.
Snow day. We are working mostly hybrid. So some offices come in because of they need to be there to do paperwork or submit financials, whatever the case may be. But mostly we're able to work remotely. So that's been, a blessing and a curse.
Yeah. I don't know. I just saw your daughter pop in on the back of the Zoom screen. I thought that was lovely. I thought that was adorable.
I've had a lot of Zoom bombers in my own house. You just never know. So,
well, Mary, when we finally get past COVID times, I'll have to bring you up to the Metuchen Diocese. They have the nicest diocesan headquarters of anybody in New Jersey.
Really?
They really do. It's gorgeous up there. So, what?
You think it's nice?
Yes, I think you guys have great. I think you guys.
Maybe I need to get out more. I've never been to Camden.
Well, I
I'll have
have
to
news
come
for you.
down.
It's not nearly as nice as the Metuchen ones. We are unique in the fact, like, as you may not be able to tell right now, but I'm broadcasting from a bank vault, which is right next.
Is this the famous vault?
This is. I'm
Yes.
in the
Notice the ugly. Now our listeners can't see, but it is the most ugly, blinding yellow color. So
creative inducing yellow. It's a creative inducing yellow. But yes, this is the vault, and I love broadcasting in there. And actually, I used to love hosting the podcast in here because everyone would freak out as soon as I closed the vault door behind me. Most notably, Mary. She hates it. She's currently on the other side of the door, and I no doubt would never come in here. But no, I do miss having everybody in the offices. We're completely reopened. But a lot of people are able to work remotely, due to health concerns and stuff like that. And I do miss that. But yes, Metuchen has the nicest diocesan center. So whenever the last couple of communications directors or New Jersey Catholic Conference meetings have all been in Metuchen because it's kind of the center of the state. And I always look forward to going up there. It's wonderful. Yeah. It's a nice, easy drive too.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's good.
It is good. I like that.
Have you ever noticed, speaking of the bank vault that you're in, or the vault, have you ever noticed that a lot of church communication takes place like in a basement or like in a closet? Like every time we go to like live stream something, it's like, oh, show me your closet. And like, it really is like a closet or in the basement or like
a booth, booth, Tara.
Yeah, the booth. Our cathedral booth is literally in a closet, and like there's vestments surrounding you.
But see, that's a good thing. For sound purposes, like when you like recording in places like that, those are actually the best places. I told, like, Mary was on a podcast recently where she had to do it from home, and she was working at her desk, and I told her to go back to her bed because the bed absorbs all the sound bouncing around. You get a much better quality. That's the
I was like, did I just hear that right? Go back to bed. I'm like, exactly.
So I now have foam core up all over in the vault to sort of kill some of the sound or the sound bouncing around. But I love it in here. I love this place. Sometimes I just come in here to sort of like get away from it all for a minute or two. It's a good spot.
Not good for people who might have claustrophobia. So I'm curious with the pandemic, the shutdown, what was that like for you guys at your diocese? I mean, how quickly were you able to adapt or put a plan together, or how did that go? And how is it going?
I think like everybody else, we thought, we're going to shut down and it'll be 2 weeks and we'll see you then, So we were kind of like on this 2-week mode planning of, okay, we're going to rally, we're going to bring people together. So that's kind of where our One Church Together campaign grew out of. Because we're like, yeah, we can do anything for 2 weeks or a month or whatever the case may be. I had no idea that here we would be in December, still in the same situation. So, I mean, it's been, I don't know about you guys, but it's been overload for us, because communications is always essential, but especially in the middle of a pandemic. And with people turning more to virtual events now, we're just such a big part of all of these events that it's coming together, but I'm doing things I never thought I would do. When our parish, I'll share this story with you. When our parishes reopened that weekend in June, we very quickly put together these welcome home posters. Jerry beautifully designed them. We got them printed, but it's a day before the parishes are set to reopen. How are we going to get them all there? And we can't ask our pastors to come and pick them up because they're in the midst of their, reopening plans. So our staff really came together and we drove around dropping off all these posters. But I took Hunterdon and Warren counties, which are a little bit more rural, so the parishes are spread apart. I drove from 10 p.m. until 6:30 a.m. dropping off these posters. And it's just things like that I'm like, I never pictured myself.
You're making me look so bad in front of Mike right now, because if he asked me to do that, I'd be like, absolutely not. Well, if it was for
that's not true.
Maybe.
That's not true. We did do the same thing. Remember, we had a video that had to go out to all of the. We recorded, edited, and distributed a video that had to be sent to all of the parishes within 16 hours. And we did it. I picked it up at the video place at 2 a.m. where they produced it all for it. And I brought my staff together and I pulled everybody from the newspaper and I said, it was 9 a.m. I said, this all needs to be distributed by 1 p.m. And we all picked a county and we just took off. And that's what we did. Much like you, I took the furthest counties because I didn't want to send any of my people any further than I would go. So I took all of the shore parishes. And
I took the close shore parishes, the one, closest.
The one where your parents have their second house. I gave you Brigantine. But
Mike, I remind you, my grandmother passed away the day before that had to go.
Oh my gosh.
That's right.
And I was going to take off.
She was
I
miserable.
Said, I'm a mess. But he said, well, what about driving? I said, driving I can do. I can.
That's right.
That's dedication right there.
Yeah.
That is. Also going back to my original comment about the importance of coercion. But
no,
I said it was fun. How about you, Gary? How's the adjustment been on your end?
So, I mean, it's just a one-man band on the road now. So I think it's been a blessing more than a curse, because we have been able to go out more than we would normally be if we were in the office. So in the office, we would have to follow pretty much to the rule on getting things out. And so the flexibility has given a little bit of freedom. And so it has been able to give us the opportunity to visit parishes, visit communities, places I've never been to before in our diocese, to meet different people. And one of the greatest moments when we had our ordinations out at the Blue Army Shrine, we got to go out there and I said, I've never been out here before. I've been working for the diocese for a little over a year, and we've never been to this particular part. And so it's those blessings that we sort of remind ourselves, even in, I'm doing this out of my house. Most of the communication work happens right here. But it also gives us opportunities to see our people, to make really good, solid connections and start building our relationship and really working towards our work in evangelization.
Yeah. Plus, I want to add, I think it's really helped build, have pastors see the value of communicating. So that's been a huge blessing. I mean, I think they're seeing communications in a way that they had never seen before. So that's a great thing.
I tend to agree with you. I've seen nothing but improvements on, I'd say, most of our parishes since we moved to this. And, in some ways, I look forward to some of that, some of that going away maybe down the road when we can all be together again. But I hope the stuff that the pastors do communicating with their parishes continues. I hope they keep with their YouTube shows. We have one priest that does a cooking show every couple of weeks on his YouTube channel. I love it. I love all these things. I think they're great ideas that I think people genuinely enjoy. Plus, we haven't talked about this a lot, but the more we can do that's joyful, sometimes, particularly during a pandemic, everything feels so morose. So I really try to have as much fun with as much of the stuff we do that we can. We're doing all these Advent live streams, and I've told all of the people working on them, I was like, listen, make them fun. People haven't had a chance to be joyful in a while. So, feel comfortable to mess around a little bit and make people laugh and things like that. So I think it's anytime you do any of that stuff, I think it could be good. Lent will be here soon enough. We could be morose for Lent, but for right now, let's try to be joyful and it's been a tough time, and I will admit that Thanksgiving was very difficult for me. It was the first time during the pandemic I really had some significant sadness about everything, because like you guys, I've been so busy I haven't had an opportunity to be sad, but I had 4 days of doing nothing during Thanksgiving, and I was like, I got to go back.
He's a workaholic. He doesn't know what to do with himself.
I didn't used to be. I used to be really lazy. It was the best, but now I'm a workaholic. So anyway, Well, listen, guys, thank you so much for joining us. We're very happy. I've been wanting to do this crossover podcast for a really long time, and the two of you are delightful. I hope all of my Talking Catholic listeners will listen to the Am I Not Here podcast, which can be found where all podcasts can be found on Apple, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Alexa, every place that you can find a podcast. So everybody, make sure you tune into their podcasts and get good spiritual stuff, and then come to me and come to us, and we'll find, good, whatever it is we create here. I don't know.
Steal their ideas.
And yes, we're going to steal all their ideas.
It's a sharing. It's a sharing.
All right, everybody. Thank you very much for tuning in. We'll talk to you next week.